Well, not on this one.
Not on this one, okay.
Oh, so okay. Change of plan.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, you can hear me, Michael? Mike?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can hear you. You can hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, good.
Miller, can you hear us?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so far, you're fine. You can play that by ear.
Yeah, I'm still probably gonna turn the video off just to make sure,
Okay.
once we get started.
Okay, so we have, Mark is not here right now. Mark is, I thought he was gonna be a challenge to,
Where's Steve?
Steve just called me and said he was sick.
Oh, no.
He's in Houston and he thought he was gonna be able to make it, but he, on Zoom.
He's sick, okay. Good.
I might leave off just for a second to talk to them and make sure.
Sure.
How's everybody? Let me tell you, I'm not real good at being super formal and everybody being quiet, first of all. So let me just say thank y'all for coming. We are doing some things a little differently today so we could have this meeting before March 15th. So everybody, and I'll explain a little bit more of that later, but what you're gonna see here is a mix. It's actually, check with our attorney and all this is legitimate, legal, where you can have a quorum with a combination of people in attendance and people on Zoom and or people on the phone. So that's a limited time. That's not always like that, but right now we still fall into that. So we are going to have an opportunity for open forum if that's what some of you want to participate in, and then we'll go into the meeting. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? This is a little unusual. Our board president, who is planning on running the meeting via Zoom, he called in about 5 minutes ago and said he's sick. And he told me earlier he wasn't feeling well, but he thought he could make it. So he's our vice president, Stephen Lowry, is going to be able to lead us. So is everybody ready? Mr. Hagler, could you lead us in the pledge? Where everybody stands? Over here.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this life you've blessed us with. We thank you for the hope of eternal life that comes through your Son. We pray, God, that you be with us as we make decisions for this district. We love all of our kids, our teachers, our parents. We thank you for this community. Be with us, God. And thank you so much for always watching over us. It's in your Son's precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
All right. Roll is called. You got everybody
Yes,
counted
sir.
for?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Very good. At this time, I'll open the floor for an open forum. If you'd like to address the board, please feel free to step up to the microphone. We'll give each person 5 minutes to speak. And if there's anything brought up that's not on the agenda, we cannot act on it. But we'll take it into consideration.
And so if you want to speak, there's a microphone, and I'm going to move the camera over so the board members can see if there's anybody wanting to speak. Yes, come. We just ask that you introduce yourself when you get to the mic, and we can go. And so those are the folks. Okay. You gotta speak.
Okay. Hi, my name's Allison Ball. I wanted to speak to the board tonight on behalf of many parents such as myself who are facing the emerging choices pertaining to masking in the community. As a practicing family nurse practitioner who's been seeing COVID patients, treating, testing over the whole past year, as well as a mother, I feel that I've been afforded a unique perspective, which I feel in good conscience that I couldn't squander. When I say that COVID affects every person differently, I make no dramatization. I've seen many breeze through it with little to no side effects, but I've also watched as patients I cared for deeply fought only to succumb days, weeks, or months later. A personal and very dear friend of our family who taught in this area for much of her life was lost after a very long battle, and I think of her daily. Abilene is only just now coming out of a devastating season of loss. I actually had to amend this because originally I said that our COVID impact here was almost 500, and as of today we are over 500, losing 10 2 days ago and 11 more now today. That's almost 24 more Abilene families affected in less than half a week. But what we often fail to remember is that death is not the only thing that COVID can do. I've seen athletes stripped of their abilities to run at very young ages. I've seen people need inhalers who never did before. I see people who struggle to even walk down a hallway, or young women who have struggled to care for their families the way that they used to. People who have taken months to be cleared to return to work. I've seen the devastation that COVID can cause firsthand, potentially for life. This disease does not just affect the elderly. Science and medicine should not boil down to a one-question parent poll. This is less about our wants, as I'm sure everyone wants to be free of masks, as I would love to be as well, but more about our public responsibility and good judgment. My husband and I both work in essential jobs in healthcare and the military, and thus have had our share of risk the past year. Because of this and the lack of masking under 4th grade in Wylie, we actually decided to keep our 2 young sons home. We're incredibly privileged and blessed to be able to afford to do so and to have our son virtual schooling through Wylie, and realize that this is not the case for every parent in our district, nor for many educators and staff who do not have the ability to choose to stay home or not work. Because of this, I felt compelled to speak tonight on their behalf. Many families must send their children to school in person, and in doing so are trusting the district with the health and safety of their most precious possessions. Most of the country is not even back in person to school at all yet, I've learned in speaking to other nursing professionals. We have done very well here by contrast in being able to continue to offer in-person school, and that is in large part thanks to the mitigation strategies teachers and staff have been so diligently employing. Other districts are just now considering how to open at all. To me, the fact that we're considering removing the simplest of mitigation measures shows a recklessness that defies scientific and medical logic. It is free to require masks, but it costs for subs when teachers fall ill, when people pull their children from the district, as I have several friends who intend to do if masks are made not required any longer, or when classes have to be quarantined. Masks are the one thing that have been proven time and time again in well-reputed medical journals throughout the pandemic to keep illness at bay. We must remember that the basic concept of masking is that your masks are protecting me, mine is protecting you. This reciprocity is what convinces me that maintaining masks in school settings will allow us to finish the school year with minimal cases to both students and staff, and therefore less of our neighbors and family members who face the threat of long-term complications. Allowing masking to become a choice will also divide the student body and potentially create pockets of bullying relative to others' beliefs, a further division that I feel is not needed and that I've already seen happening among adults. I have several friends who've discussed similar concerns with me in regards to their own children. Neighboring ISDs have already made the commitment to masking through the end of the year, and I implore you to do the same for our district. Many staff have not yet had the opportunity to receive their vaccines, and few, if any, students. Many had second doses interrupted by the storm and do not yet have full immunity. This means that when students and faculty return after spring break vacations, bringing with them anything they have contracted elsewhere, within weeks we will begin to see it once again wreak havoc on our own community before we even know that many are contagious. We know that COVID does not only affect those who are willing to take risks, and with all 5 more contagious variants already found in Houston, we must factor that into our decision making. And I did verify that with a prominent Texas epidemiologist that I consulted before writing this. Hendrick has asked several times for the community to play an active part in risk mitigation, and I feel that this is our chance to help our healthcare team in the fight against a disease that has killed hundreds already in our county. We must remember to view these losses as people and individuals instead of numbers that are flashed in front of us for seconds on the news. Do you want an educator that you love to be next, or a student? And can you reconcile those losses with yourself should you choose to forego all precaution as quickly as possible? Can you reconcile their long-term health issues and possibly disability from a decision that you had a hand in making? I ask in earnest and with all sincerity as someone who has had witness to it firsthand, and I feel that it would be easiest to continue a policy that everyone is already acclimated to rather than rescinding it, seeing cases rise as a result, and having to reinstitute it for the last couple of weeks. So in conclusion, I implore you, both as a healthcare provider who has witnessed COVID long-hauling firsthand, and as a mother who would feel more comfortable sending my children back to school in person if there were masks, to stay the course and finish the school year with the mask requirement in place. It is only 9 more weeks, and we can do that easily together. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Yeah, come on up.
I'm sorry, I literally found out about this meeting 45 minutes ago, so I don't have anything prepared or typed up. What I do have is passion and concern for, obviously, our community and our well-being, my kids, our kids here. I don't think that we should continue the masks. I think you can kind of tell that. Couple of major points that I want to point out, and then I'm going to let somebody else speak. The major point being Texas Education Code 37.023, Article 7B, I'm sure you're aware of it. It says, it specifically prohibits impairing the student's breathing. I'm sorry, I'm very emotional about this. Including any procurement that includes obstructing the student's airways, including placing an object in, on, or over the student's mouth, nose, or placing a bag cover or mask over the student's face. It's very specific with what it says. It's already in place on our law books. We've had these masks on for a year. It's time. Who is going to be responsible for the repercussions of problems associated with wearing those masks? We are supposed to breathe in clean air and out toxins from our body. These masks are obstructing health from our kids, not only physical health, but mental health. My son is a freshman, and he needs to see other people's faces. He needs to see smiles. It's not normal to wear these masks. It's not good for our mental state. And there's so many more problems associated with it. We're dealing with issues with ears being pulled because of the mask wearing. We're seeing cases of that. There's lung problems associated with wearing these masks all the time. Who's going to be held accountable to those health repercussions from these masks long term? This was supposed to have been a 2-week, let's just knock it out. That hasn't happened. How far are we going to go? How far are we going to take it? And I'll also say this, that it's surprisingly strange that the flu disappeared last year. My thought is that the flu has been tagged as COVID because, well, we all know that a lot of hospitals are getting paid a lot of money based on COVID determinations, COVID responses. So that's me. That's my emotional plea. I think we lose the masks. If you want to wear them, fine. I don't even have a problem with that. But don't force my child to wear them.
Could you repeat your name? I missed that one.
Sure. It's Jill Robertson.
Jill Robertson. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Good evening, everybody here. I didn't bring anything prepared, but I just want to take a couple minutes and bring up a couple points.
Can we get your name?
My name is Wes Hawks, H-A-W-K-S. My wife is Sherry. She's also here in the audience tonight. We have 2 boys in Wylie. Have been going since kindergarten. They're now in 4th and 6th grade. My wife has been a PTO member several years, room mother. Our kids are in UIL, DI, GT. We're very involved in the school. I'm now a developer. I'm retired law enforcement. We developed Waldrop Road going down near the elementary school. Any chance we can get, we give back, especially to the school. I mean, obviously the kids are the next generation. What I want to talk about, take you back a couple of years. Y'all remember the flu that went through Wylie, and there was one week where half the school was gone. Kids get sick. The flu is a respiratory illness. They get well. The World Health Organization, the CDC, have came out not just a few times, multiple times with reports. Their stance, children are not a vector. Children are literally a 99.994% recovery rate. Now there are people, and I'm not gonna pick on the young lady here, I'm not real emotional about what's going on, but it does bother me, and I do see what's happening to the kids. We are now keeping both of our kids home for a year now, and they miss their friends, they miss the teachers, but the reason they refuse, they're smart kids. They see what's going on. We took this serious when it came out, we all did. We watched it, we were like, oh my gosh, what's happening? There's people dying. And it ended up not being anything near, remotely, not 1% of what they said it was gonna be. And at that point, doctors started coming out saying, this is not necessary, the masks are overkill, there's not an issue with kids being them. And the other issue they brought up, CDC and the World Health Organization, is teachers are not in any danger, any more so than if they're out in the street. You cannot blame a child who is not a vector and is not getting sick and is not transferring this thing to anybody and say the teacher caught it from a child when 7 hours of their day is at the school around the same group of kids. But they function in society like the rest of us. They're at grocery stores. They're at ball games. We've played Little League every year for 8 years now, and our children are out there. They're with the other kids all day long. We think we caught it back in February. We went to Lubbock. We had an unspecified illness. They couldn't figure out what the virus was. We were all sick in our family, not minor to moderate, for about 6 days. Tested for the flu. They were baffled. COVID had just came out, but they didn't think it had traveled here yet. I think they're wrong. We all probably agree now. They agree that we're wrong. So we've abided by that. We've homeschooled. My wife has had to literally quit her job and become the teacher, because as good as the Wylie teachers are, and I've talked to Mr. Light about, they are phenomenal. We all agree with that. Our teachers are bar none some of the best. However, you got parents staying home teaching kids who cannot learn in an environment where they're masked up. Now, what I'm asking for, because the school district has 100% on y'all, you can decide tonight what you want to do. I'm not saying let's all rip them off and chastise the people that have them, but our kids are all mature enough, and I think we're mature enough to decide if we want to wear something or not wear it. And if they want to wear it, God bless them. But if we don't want to wear it, we shouldn't be forced to. I am going to directly say something about the lady that was up here earlier. Masks don't work one direction. They don't work if you inhale, but only if you don't exhale. If they work, they work. If they don't, they don't. So to say, I'm going to wear a mask to save you and you have to wear one to save me is completely not just disingenuous, it's insane. It makes zero sense in the world of reality. Do they help? I don't know. The World Health Organization, again, and CDC, who I know you guys have had to abide by, and same with the TEA. We don't know if they're going to work or not, but we do know that the kids are suffering. And I'm praying and I'm hoping that you guys can make a decision, because you have the freedom to do that. Governor Abbott said you had the absolute freedom to decide school by school. Hawley has eliminated it. I've heard of 2 districts in Lubbock that has eliminated it. Our school is healthy, our city is healthy. And the last thing I want to say about these cases, they're calling them cases, people. They're people, completely well people with a positive test. Never in my life, in my many years in law enforcement, have I seen perfectly well people getting tested and say, I'm a COVID case. We're not COVID cases, people. People will get sick, but the vast majority, a 99.94% recovery across the spectrum. 20 and below is 99.994. Nobody is getting sick from these children. Nobody. That is a complete fabrication. People are getting sick. Elderly people with pre-existing conditions are getting more susceptible. Those are the people that should take those extra precautions, and I support helping those people. What I don't support is masking an 8-year-old kid.
Sorry.
I'm perfectly timed. So anyway, that's what I have to say, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Anybody?
Good evening. My name is Beverly Day, and I have one grandchild at Wylie East and one at Wylie West. And I've watched what's happened just like the world has, and I've done a lot of reading, a lot of soul searching. I've listened to both sides, and I think as adults, we can do what we need to do for us, but God gives us charge of our children, because we are the ones that are supposed to be making the decisions for them. I get all of that. I see the doctor side of it. I've had many discussions through social media with people around the world, not just locally. And I just have to remind everybody that I had H1N1 a few years ago with my grandson. Not only did no one wear a mask, nobody wore one at the doctor's office. No one wore them at the pharmacy. And they said the very same things about H1N1, that it was a death sentence. everybody was gonna get it and everybody was gonna die. Y'all, we've been watching this happen through politics for a long time. This is just another in a long string of the very same things that have been happening. Have more people died with this than with the flu? No, they have not. They don't want us to, I don't know if they don't want us to know. I think the numbers have been so exaggerated and people literally were so scared that they didn't know who to believe. Well, the 2 weeks has turned into a year and 3 months now, and it's gonna run its course just like every other flu has. My daughter that's here, Ben's mom, and my husband and I, the three of us had COVID at the same time, and then after 2 weeks was almost over, my grandson comes up sick. The doctor's office wasn't even gonna see him. Y'all all have COVID, he has COVID. Well, he just kept getting sicker and sicker, so she insisted that they see him, which they did. He tested positive for flu B, while we all three had COVID and didn't test positive for the flu A or B. So I think my point is that they can call this whatever they want to call it. I don't care what they call it. But doing this to children have had it, I get it, but the children, 99% of the children that have it have a very mild case. Ben was as sick as we were with the flu, but we've all been having the flu for, flu shots have been out for 72 years. None of us have worn a mask. So I'm just asking y'all to put this in perspective, that yes, for the people who've gotten sick, some of them, it's been a death sentence for them, but so is the flu. And it kills thousands and thousands around the world every year. So let's just put this in perspective, what we're doing to the babies, okay? Thank you, that's all I had.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name's Melissa Day. I just wanted to follow up what she said. When my son tested positive for the flu when we all had COVID, he returned to school with a doctor's note, of course, saying that he was clear to come back to school. He had not run fever the entire time that we were out. So when he returned to school, he had a doctor's note, and he had been out for a solid 3.5 weeks, 2 weeks with us on quarantine for COVID, a week with flu, and then we kept him home an additional 2 days just to be sure that he wasn't gonna bring anything back to the school. And his first day back, his teacher asked him what he was out sick with, and he said, I had the flu. His teacher then made him wear a mask all day long in his classroom. And Benjamin has allergy-induced asthma. And after having the flu, which of course affected his lungs because he has allergy-induced asthma, after wearing a mask all day long in his classroom and not being able to breathe and have access to enough oxygen, he had to have breathing treatments for a solid week. So I am begging you guys to take this into consideration. He's 9. He's not even in the class that has to wear masks right now. But knowing what it did to just my son, what is it doing to the 10-year-olds that y'all are making wear them all day long every day? Y'all need to really think about what you're doing to our children. 6 months doesn't do anything. The 10-year-olds that y'all are making do this, it's not right. Governor Abbott knows it, y'all know it, we all know it, and y'all need to stop. That's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Jason Wilson. And I, again, was shocked to see that forcing a child to wear a mask is a prohibited aversive technique under Section 37.0023, I believe it is, of the Texas Education Code. And we want to know, why is that a prohibited aversive technique? And why is it allowed to be enforced upon the general population of students? And who will be held responsible if there are long-term problems children suffer from this? And that could be physical, psychological, or emotional. When children, it doesn't appear, are spreading the illness, why are they being told they're in such danger, and they are such a danger to others. I just want to say we don't consent. And we read in the media that states that have had high in-person school attendance, like Florida, they're having better COVID numbers than states that implemented the school closures and lockdowns. The public and even the children of your district are seeing this in the news. How are they to reconcile that with what they're being told at school and what they're being told to believe? Other districts have already lifted their mask mandate, and we just hope that this district will follow suit. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Okay, anybody else?
My name is Sherry Hawks, and obviously my husband spoke earlier. Like he said, we have 2 boys that are in the school system, and I have been doing the whole virtual online thing simply because my children and us as well did not want them to go to school with the mask. We believe it's the right of a human being to breathe. Sorry, I get emotional too. And it just makes me sick to my stomach that we have to do this, and especially for something like all the people over there at the table have talked about. Everybody does get sick. Flus, people die. This, to me, and regardless of how you believe, if it's COVID or the flu, I believe that it's a modified flu, yes, and people with compromised immune systems, bad things happen. Unfortunately, that's life, and I'm not being callous or cold-hearted about any of that. It upsets me to see my children not get to go to school and see people, their friends. It's devastating to them, and it really goes down to my soul. And I'm just asking for the option to have the children in school not wear a mask. I'm not asking that the people who want to wear one, let them wear one. I have no issues with that. I think everyone's a free human being on this earth, and we should have the right to breathe with our mouth, not through a mask. That's all.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Vale. I don't have a whole lot to say.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Anna Vale.
Anna Vale, okay.
I don't have a lot to say. Thank you. I'm emotional about the situation as well, so I just wrote down a few things. I have 2 children in Wylie East, and I just want to echo the concerns of my fellow parents over here. My mother has been a respiratory therapist for 25 years at Hendrick Hospital, and she has major concerns about young children, young healthy children wearing masks, prohibiting their breathing in their own CO2 and their own toxins, and how unhealthy it is for extended periods of time. I understand and sympathize with all of the lives lost and with the people getting sick, but I'd like to just remind you all as you make your decision tonight that there's been a huge mental health crisis since this mandate has started, especially in young adults and teens, and COVID is not the only reason that lives are being lost. So I just ask that we take the masks off of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you for your time and your willingness to come and share with the board. Give Mr. Lyons a chance to get back on camera.
Yeah, we don't want to cheat anybody of the opportunity.
Okay, we will move on to the next item. Consider approval of bid for the utility improvements along Colony Hill Road, Oldham Lane, and Hardison Road.
Yes, sir. We've been talking about this water line improvement for quite a while. David Todd is here tonight and ready to answer any questions we might have. But I just want to remind everybody that this is so we can have the fire suppression line on Wylie East Intermediate. The water pressure at the existing line wasn't great enough, and so therefore, as part of the process to get that building built, we had to bring that water line in. David, do you want to speak any about the bidding process and the bidders who were available and so forth?
Good evening, David Todd. Basically, what Joey said, it was correct. The city, we have 3 water plants, and each water plant furnishes water to a different pressure plane in town, and just unfortunately, the difference between the middle pressure plane and high pressure plane runs through this site. And so the city...
Can you speak up just a little bit?
So the city, when we first approached them about that site, the city said, we want you to connect to the 3rd pressure plane, which is the elevated storage tank out at 707 A384, and it's fed mainly by the water plant that's out south and the distribution system. So the closest water line we had to this site is the one we put in for the East Elementary and Junior High. So we're carrying this water line east on Colony Hill Road, up north along Odom, then turning back east, going down Hardison Lane, and then back into the site. In the city's master plan, they had targeted that the line along Odom Lane between Colony Hill and Hardison Road and back along Hardison Road back to Maple would be a 16-inch line. So they are participating in this cost basically for the difference between an 8-inch line and a 16-inch line. So in round numbers, the basic line length was 8,300 feet. Of that, 5,300 feet is going to be a 16-inch. So the city's participating in the oversizing from an 8-inch to a 16-inch line. We took bids on February 23rd. We had 6 bidders. The low bid was a company out of Mansfield, Texas called Black Rock Construction. I have checked out their credentials. They got good recommendations, especially from the city of Waco, where they're doing a lot of work, and so would recommend that we award this contract to them for $845,867,000. Thursday, the city of Abilene will be approving what's called an interlocal agreement. They'll participate in the oversizing. Their cost of this $845,000 will be $266,000, leaving Wylie responsible for $579,577. There also is a $100,000 contingency line item in there in case we run across something that we weren't encountering. We've got a lot of oil and gas pipelines we got to cross under out there, and we're having to bore those. So if we don't spend that $100,000, y'all's part of this thing will be reduced by $68,000. So that's kind of in a nutshell how all this is working.
And so let me just say, I did talk to our attorney. This is a little different on how we've dealt with the city on an interlocal agreement in the past. They did say we could approve this pending the city council's decision on Thursday. And one of the things David was asking for is to get this project moving as soon as possible. Therefore, we would be able to complete the project as soon as we can. And they need that water line as soon as possible. David, you want to, I think.
Right, the plan is right now, the scheduling is they need to charge the fire suppression system at the new school somewhere around October the 15th. So that's kind of when we have a completion date.
That was my question. What happens if it gets
Well-
hung up in the city?
Well, I don't, you know, we don't enter into this discussion with them without having had many conversations with them. And city leadership feels like this is a very important project for future growth. And so I think they're more than happy to participate.
And the administration's all on board with this, it just takes council action to make it formal.
So, if anybody else has any other questions, we'd be glad to answer those. Let me just make note that we do have several here that weren't here originally. Steve, you're back. Glad to see you're back. Mark is on the phone. He's with us. Miller's with us. And Mike Autry is with us. So we do have all 7 board members here.
Thank you.
And so I guess, Stephen, Steve, are you okay with Stephen continuing running the meeting right now?
I think he needs to preside because I'm kind of shaky health-wise, so it would be better for him to preside.
Okay, and so we're probably gonna have to make a voice vote on this, so we may need to call a roll and get the vote, because we've got some without video, I'm sorry. So.
All right. Any other questions about this? Anybody want to act?
I will. Make a motion that we approve the bid for Black Rock Construction for utility improvements along Colony Hill Road, Oldham Lane, and Hardison Road.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. You got that, Desiree?
Yes, can we also, I'll just add the pending the approval of the city.
Pending approval
by the city.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion about that? Then I guess we will have a voice vote.
So, we'll go ahead and call Mike, you've got Michael up there. Mike Autry. Yay or nay? Yes.
Yay.
Miller, Loudermilk.
Yes.
Steve Keenum,
Yes.
Mark McClellan,
Yes.
Chris McCurley,
Yes.
Brad Hill.
Yes, sir.
And I say yes, it's unanimous. Very good.
Okay?
That's approved. Next up.
Thank you. Thank you, David, appreciate it.
Next item up for board action is consideration of modifying our policy for COVID-19 in regard to face covering.
Okay, let me, before I get started, Miller, I apologize. My computer had a crisis right before the meeting. I was planning on showing the back camera so you could see the board and the crowd, but this computer doesn't have that feature, so we've had to change. So anyway, that's why I'm not showing that. So I want to give a little background about how we got to where we are today with some of the issues in regard to face coverings. As everybody knows, we're right at 1 year when all this broke loose. 1 year ago in the middle of spring break, as a matter of fact. And so, actually it was in July that that Governor Abbott had the executive order GA 29, which mandated masks for 10 years old and up in certain settings, including schools. TEA guidance also echoed his order. On Tuesday, March 2nd of 2021, Governor Abbott issued Executive Order GA 34, which many see as lifting masks for all, including public schools, effective March 10th, which is tomorrow. Item 6 of that order states public schools may operate as provided by guidance issued by the Texas Education Agency, or TEA, we commonly call it. TEA has since put out public health guidance on March 4th relating and taking into account GA 34. And it's under the section for health and hygiene practices, which specifically address masks. That section states that the governing board of a school system may modify or eliminate by formal action the mask-related requirements. Again, let me just say that that's one reason why we're here tonight. I was asking to get some direction, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Since GA 34 was to take effect on March 10th during spring break, and since school is to resume on March 15th, this coming Monday, and since we don't have another regularly scheduled board meeting until April 12th, I felt the need to give direction to our students, staff, and parents by asking the board to meet and to give us direction on masks at school. And so that's why we're here today. And I appreciate the board working with me and trying to make this happen. I felt strongly that whatever direction we go, we need to communicate it before they come back on Monday. And so that's the information I have. If there's any questions or, about anything, I'll be glad to answer those. And let me make a couple of other comments. You know, when we started masks, well, so let's talk about the safety protocols in general. If you'll remember, our original goal was to flatten the curve. It was to keep the health system from being overrun, which I think that was mentioned several times. Currently, the infection rate, and I think, Stephen, I know you are well aware of this, but I think the infection rate on Taylor County has continued to decline.
The overall trend has continued to decline.
Yes, Taylor County has continued to decline on infection rates. And right now the rate in schools has continued to decline, and since we've last talked, we are now at 0. And we talked about how over the last couple of weeks it was 2 or 3, and now I called today and we're at 0 active cases. And the other thing that I think the governor was hanging his hat on was that vaccinations are being given as fast as they can be given. You know, one of the tragedies, I think, is we heard about at the Civic Center, they had vaccinations available, but nobody was, we had about 400 that we needed to give people before their expiration date occurred or something. I mean,
they can only be taught for so long.
Yeah, before they were no longer useful, beneficial. So, you know, I think Abilene, Texas has made a great effort to vaccinate as many folks as they can. I don't know the percentage of that, but I know that a lot of people, I can tell you one, my mother, I finally got her taken care of, and at 94, she's gotten both vaccinations, so she's feeling better about life. So I think those are all pertinent issues with where we are today. So that's what I have for information.
So
Can we ask questions yet?
Stephen's about to speak, Miller.
Yeah,
Hang on just a
perfect.
second.
Yeah.
This obviously is a very divisive issue, and it has been for a long time because of conflicting recommendations from the very beginning and conflicting information.
Can you tell him to speak up?
Get a little closer.
Yeah, I'll say this has been a very divisive issue, and it has been from the very beginning because of conflicting commentary, recommendations from authorities, and part of that conflicting information is just because we've been learning on the fly what this means, how it travels, how it spreads, and who it affects the worst. This is unlike anything since the Spanish flu, and you know, people have mentioned the flu illnesses, H1N1. I'm not picking on the speaker earlier tonight. These are conversations that I've been having for a year with different people, and the early speculation was, okay, yeah, this is just like a bad flu season. This is a year ago, a conversation I'm having. Fast forward to April, May, June, I was having conversations with folks like, man, isn't this a lot just like H1N1? And I'll just say, it is not like either of those. It spreads much more rampant. And because of the spread in how it occurs, that's why things get overrun. The mitigation for 2 weeks, I never thought 2 weeks was going to be enough after watching what was going on in Italy and all the other rest of the world. But that was part of that conflicting messaging that we got. So here we are with this divisive issue in front of us. I'll say, whenever we started seeing things rise in the summer, that's when the governor put his mandate in place. And we saw things slow down, and it was a manageable pace. And we started school. Wylie, I'm very proud of Wylie and a lot of the other schools in our region who were very aggressive in taking approaches to try to safely proceed and get kids back in the classroom. And here, we're a little bit of an exception to a lot of our neighbors in that fourth grade and down, we're not requiring masks. And that has not been a problem because it turns out kids are not the vector. And so I think we're fortunate there, and that has worked out well for us. But we also put these measures in place to be able to continue providing as much normalcy as possible in such an abnormal time. You remember early on, we were working out protocols for what to do with close contacts and who has to go home, who doesn't, who was on the bus with this person on the volleyball trip. And there was one issue after another. And we've gotten that all straightened out. And here we are today, still with seasons going on, and still with but also a very positive direction or trend in our community. I'm very hopeful that the trend continues, and maybe we'll see this thing burn out and go away. That's certainly a possibility. But I also know that after the last round of holidays, Thanksgiving, it started taking off. And Christmas and New Year's, it exploded. And those numbers weren't made up, and it basically shut down a lot of the healthcare system for things that we routinely do or people come to the hospital for, because hospitals, and not just locally, but statewide and nationwide, were overrun. There was no place to transfer hospitals to. And I know we're here dealing with what's best for the kids, but I'm just saying this is why these mitigation strategies were in place. It got overrun. That all took off after those holidays. And here we are today with the holiday, spring break coming up. And not everybody's going to travel, not everybody's going to be getting together in large groups. But we don't know what the impact is going to be over the next 2-3 weeks when everybody starts coming back into school. And if it's, I don't anticipate it being hopefully as bad as it was after Christmas and New Year's. But I would suspect there will be a little bump or more than a little bump, I don't know. I expect we'll see a rise in cases. And so I think if we made a change right here today, then that's gonna change how we have to deal with close contacts and quarantines and who we send home and UIL activities and all these things that we have so far have been able to maintain for the most part by having these protocols in order. I think one thing that has changed recently, the state opened up vaccines to teachers and educators and folks who are on the front lines, if you will, with our kids. And not all of them have had a chance yet because they weren't in the 1A or 1B categories to get a vaccine. And I know we're working on setting up the availability for our faculty, our staff members, to have that available to them. And I don't think it should be forced on anybody whether to take the vaccine. But I think rather than acting tonight, just for the UIL activities and mandatory quarantining and all of that could potentially create the problems that could potentially create, but also push it back a little bit until our teachers have had time to get vaccinated. And the ones that choose to do so get their second vaccine and have their immunity so that ones that so desire feel safer environment where we might change. And so for that reason, my personal recommendation is keep the status quo right now and get the teachers taken care of, see what the trend is after spring break, and then readdress this in April.
Miller, I think you had a question.
Yes, and I'm gonna, I guess, kind of piggyback on something that you said, and maybe you can.
You're breaking up a little, Miller.
Well, because I think he is correct. We are still
Miller?
required to close contact. Yes.
We right now, all the other efforts that we've had would stay in place according to the direction that we're recommending. It would only impact.
So close contact.
We would continue to do close contacts at this time.
So teachers, I guess I'm trying to make sure I understand it. So teachers that are deemed close contact, they don't have the option like parents do. So we would see teachers out of the classroom for 14 days again, like we've seen, or no?
No, that's not accurate, and I don't know if Mr. Besson is on the line. I don't know if he can hear me.
If he can tell us that.
If he wants to address that, but really they are in a different situation now than we were at the first of this. They do have options. Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, if you can hear me. But now if they aren't showing symptoms, they can be tested day 3 and day 7, I believe is right. And if they're still not showing symptoms, they would not necessarily have to miss anything. Mr. Hager,
it's 7 days.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, 7 days then. Okay.
Yes.
Even a blind hog finds an acorn every now and then.
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember, so it's 7 days and they would be out.
No, Miller. If
They don't have to be out.
they don't have to be out, they just, if they aren't showing symptoms, they would be tested on day 3 and then on day 7.
That is correct.
So that's my question. So they have to test negative on day 3 and day 7.
No, but if if they're negative, if they're negative, they continue to work. They don't necessarily miss work.
Correct.
They only miss work, Miller, if they have a symptom or test positive.
Okay.
And we test them before school on day 3 and day 7, before school starts on those days, so.
And that's been in effect, Craig, probably a month and a half, 2 months, something like that.
Yes. Something like that, yeah. That is correct.
Mr. Light, there was a survey.
Be sure to talk loud,
Okay.
so.
Mr. Light, there was a survey sent out yesterday, I believe, is that correct?
Yes,
Do
sir.
we have the results of that survey?
Yes, and so let me say, this was not a scientific survey. We're not scientific. We sent it out to all of our staff originally, and I would say we got pretty fast feedback on the staff survey, and it was a one-question survey. I'm the one who's responsible for one-question surveys because I want them to fill them out, and I'm really not trying to get in details and weeds why some might like it slightly different here or slightly different there. I'm more or less wanting to get a broad, just, hey, where do I fit on this idea of masks? And so let me just say that we have, again, and I'm going to give you an approximate number of 650 employees, of which 350 are teachers. We had 401 responses, and which is really large percentage of our staff. 62.1% asked that masks would be optional or recommendation, basically. And then 37.9% asked that we keep current mask requirements. And that's where we landed on that. There was some discussion that folks wanted to know exactly how our teachers felt about it because they are on the firing lines, and that again that's the results of that. And I would say that I feel pretty good about the validity of that. It was a fairly quick response, and it was on Google Sheets, so it wasn't truly anonymous even. They had to sign in their Google account to be able to take that. And so we had control over who was taking that test. So that was a staff survey.
Okay. If you don't mind, may I speak?
Yeah.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I know this is a very divisive situation, and as we just saw, and anybody you talk to is going to be one way or the other. There's really seems like middle ground on this issue. I personally have had an issue with this since the government put it in place. I think it's an infringement on personal choice. Now I regard it to be a personal choice, and we are a governmental entity, whether we look at it or not. And I don't believe the government has the ability to tell people what to wear and what not to wear as far as face masks go. I don't. And I understand the medical side of things. I've seen both sides of it. I've had family members affected with it. Still do. But I think a recommendation of personal choice to do it is the way to do it all day long. And I think you're gonna make people mad one way or the other, but as a school system, I don't think we should force our kids to wear it. I don't think we should force our teachers to wear it. It should be a choice. And I'm just gonna throw that out there to let everybody know where I stand, and so.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I'd like to say that, man, I'm a big Stephen Lowry fan.
Yes.
We're friends, and I love you to death. And I greatly admire and respect everything you've had to say all along with this. I don't believe the other side of my belief on this is terribly wrong, or I don't believe in. I don't look at the partisan politics of it. I look at it from the standpoint of what I feel is in the best interests. And I think that's where there's the divide. You know, you have two extremes and you really don't have anything in between. And I just, whatever the board decides going forward, we've succeeded in being a really strong unit together. And so I won't disparage what the board decides going forward if I'm outnumbered on this. But I strongly believe it needs to be voluntary. I strongly believe that because we have the virtual option, granted some feel like it's not the best way to do things, but it is an option. And I feel like because we have that, I feel like it should be voluntary for teachers and for students. We're not telling people they can't wear a mask. We're just saying, you know, use your own judgment. Another piece of this that we haven't really talked about is enforcing it now that the governor has lifted the mandate. And I feel for Mr. Smith and our administration and some of our teachers trying to enforce something that is no longer an executive order. And I think that's a piece of this. Maybe I'm wrong, Mr. Smith, but it seems like that could be a difficulty and a nightmare, perhaps. But the one caveat I had in this, and I asked Mr. Light yesterday, what do our teachers think? Because if our teachers are all in on continuing to do this, I'll stand back. I mean, I want to support our teachers, and that's why I asked for the survey. But as it stands today, I'm for the voluntary. You can wear them if you choose.
Mr. Keenum, I think anybody else that's on line, anybody else want to say something? Mike, it looks like you unmuted.
Yes, thank you. And guys and everybody that spoke tonight, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate everybody coming and saying something. And you know, and like somebody said earlier, that Joey, you and the staff, everybody has done a fabulous job of keeping our COVID numbers low and keeping it manageable. All that being said, I'm a little different on this because I'm in the medical field. And I'm not on the front lines like Dr. Lowry, but as one guy put it, I do deliver ammunition to the front lines. I sell respiratory inhalers. They're for COPD and asthma. So every day, all day long, I talk to physicians, I talk to nurses, I talk to patients who have come in contact or had somebody or had COVID themselves and had issues with this disease. We've been in this for 12 months now, and I think it's totally reckless and careless to think we know a lot about it. We're still learning a lot more as we go on and on. That being said, I'm not a fan of these masks. I don't like it. I don't like what the governor did initially. I don't like that he shut down the businesses. I think that's up to each business owner. I think everybody should have the right to go in and keep their business open and be at full capacity. And if we as patrons want to go in with a mask or not, or we take that risk. When it comes to our schools, I think what we've been doing has done a good job. We have kept the numbers low. We did see a surge. Anytime we take a school break, we see a surge. So that goes to Thanksgiving and that goes to Christmas. I think it's again careless if we all of a sudden after spring break decide to change things that have been working. That's like jumping off a winning horse in a race. And we're this close to the finish line. Or put it another way, it's like being in a basketball game and changing the strategy when you're winning, but it's a close game within the last couple of minutes. And then just deciding, you might lose. I'm with Dr. Lowry on this about waiting for a few more weeks, maybe the 1st of April, to see if there is another surge in the number of cases after spring break. And to readdress it then. I think right now is a very bad time. I wish the governor hadn't done this like he did. TEA, UIL, and the other big schools in the state of Texas are still requiring masks. They're not changing things. Most of the schools, if you look at it, I just looked up before we got on, are requiring things to stay in place to finish out the year. And when I think about that, I think about last year at this time when I got several phone calls from senior parents asking and praying and hoping that we would have some type of normal graduation. and hoping that we would have a graduation ceremony. And luckily, we were able to. It may have been only 5 or 7 attendees, and I got calls on that one as well, hoping we could get more. The way we're going right now, we are winning this race. We are going to be able to have spring football. We're having spring baseball. We are going to be able to have graduation, and I hope we can take the mask off at graduation and pack the stadium, whatever it's going to take. And I hope we can get back to more normal. I just don't think it's a good idea to change the winning strategy today, especially when spring break is upon us and these kids are going to come back to school on Monday.
Thanks, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
I have something, if anybody, was somebody else gonna go?
You're up, Miller.
Okay. So I guess I have an interesting perspective, and I really wasn't gonna probably touch on this, but I have kids who I would love for the masks to be off, because I want their teachers to see their smiling little faces, and but for those of you that don't know, I've been hit hard by COVID, and I'm currently still on oxygen. I was a young, healthy human, and so for me, it's a different perspective. I literally have perspective from both sides as far as wanting the masks off my children, because I want that for them, but then also seeing the medical side of it. That, I mean, I was in the hospital. I mean, it was not good. So I see both sides of it, and I think that's a healthy thing for us to all see both sides of this, and to understand that we're making a decision for still our teachers. And I look at, and I still do think that it's 40% is still a high number of teachers that are uncomfortable with it right now, and I think that's a good number. We're not talking 5%, 40% of our teachers that are still nervous about it. That's a big number. So for me, I want these masks to come off my kids. I don't think, and I'm gonna agree with Mr. Lowry and Mr. Autry. I'm okay with waiting 2 weeks and just seeing what happens after spring break. And if spring break we don't have a surge, I'm okay with taking them off. Because I want that for my kids. But I also have to trust that there's a reason why other school districts are leaving them on, because this is the time where you see a surge. So I'm not opposed to taking them off. It's just I don't want them off right now. I think that we should wait and see what happens, and come April, if we're good, then we can reevaluate it. And I think that's the best way to do it, that will cause the least amount of disruption for our teachers and for our kids, believe it or not. So.
Okay, thank you, Miller. Mark, you haven't had a chance to speak. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, sure. I see both sides of it. But I just, in my mind, I think you gotta draw the line in the sand somewhere. And, we've hit the point now where we have, gotten to a point where we have flattened, and we've gotten to a point where we don't have many infected. We got spring break this week. We've got Easter coming up, April 7th or whatever the date is, some 1st of April, whatever the number is. We're going to get to that point where families are going to get together, and then we've got other holidays that are going to, I know we're going to be getting out of the school year for too long, but I'm just to the point, I think, where you got to draw a line in the sand, and it may be a situation where we do see a spike. I hope we don't, but we very possibly could. And there's been so many back and forth on whether masks work or don't work. I mean, I still don't know if they know if masks work or don't work. They talk about wearing double masks. For too long ago, I had 15 of them on. But it's just been, you know, I haven't minded wearing one because, you know, just for the better cause of the community, but I'm still not sold one way or the other on whether masks actually work or not. But come back from spring break, if we're not wearing masks, we may find out very well if masks do work or not. And I also know from, you know, just from different things that I read early on, Joey, you and I talked about it. You know, I read 3 or 4 different articles from, you know, different sites on studies that were done, and kids are not necessarily super spreaders based on what I've read. Now, that maybe they've changed their studies on that. I haven't seen anything on that, but early on they were, you know, saying kids aren't super spreaders. But it's certainly a different situation for our teachers where they're, you know, they're not kids. So you know, maybe they're a little more at risk than our students are, but. Student to student and student to teacher, from what I've read, is not where it's at so much. You know, right now, I like I said, I think you got to draw a line staying somewhere, and I realize we don't have much time left in the school year, and I've got a kid that's just still playing golf. That's got a good chance to go regionals in golf, and if she gets infected, then, you know, we may be staying home. And she's also a type 1 diabetic, so I've got a risk there as well. So, and myself, I've got conditions as well, but I've had it, and it was extremely mild. But I know people like Miller that have had it and have had really tough times, and I know people who have had loved ones that have passed away. But as of right now, I think we got to draw a line in the sand and give it a roll.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, I guess I'm the only one left, huh, Joey?
Yes, sir.
Well, I want to tell everybody that I appreciate Dr. Lowry sitting in that seat tonight. I am so sorry that I couldn't be there and that I've been under the weather a little bit and I wasn't able to be here at the beginning. So, I know this was a difficult night to sit in that chair, Stephen, so thank you very much for that. And I also want to say that I love this board. They love our kids. They love our district. They care tremendously. They invest so much in themselves. And I really do admire all of them about this. Everybody has had been impacted in some way by this. My wife had it, I didn't. Why that's true, I don't know. I've lost friends. I've had friends that had no measurable symptoms other than they tested positive and had a runny nose. This is going to be a question when we get to heaven. We're going to ask the Lord, what was this all about? God, what were you trying to teach us? It hasn't been fun in lots of ways. It hasn't been fun in lots of ways. I hope there is no spike after spring break, no matter what we do. Whatever decision is made, I pray that people will still care about their classmates and their teammates and their neighbors, their teachers, their administrators, everyone. Because this is such a personal thing. I mean, it's personal for everybody. And we do need to offer as much grace and consideration to those that may see it a little differently than we do for whatever reason. To me, Joy, the survey of the parents, I know you didn't give those numbers. I know you said over 3,500 parents responded, and we were somewhere around 70% asked for the mandate to be lifted. Well, it's my hope, and I'm going to bet on mom and dad, and I pray that they will use caution and guidance, especially as we get back to spring break, I know if we had made kids put stuff on there, there'd been some battles, but if mom and dad encourage it and insist on it, then we've got a chance for kids to do it. With all that said, I pray God would bless our district and keep our kids and faculty safe. But I move that Wylie ISD's face covering requirement for students and employees be modified to a recommendation that students and employees wear face coverings, and that the board to delegate to the superintendent the authority to implement all further appropriate policies and procedures with respect to protective measures addressing the COVID-19 pandemic for the remainder of the school year.
So we got a motion by Mr. Keenum.
He's been here,
It's recommended it's optional.
Yeah, I didn't quite hear what he said.
So what I have recommended, and they couldn't hear, they didn't understand it. If you look at your board packet in the recommendation, I just want to, before, and this may kind of be out of kilter here, but let me just say to echo what Steve said. I have witnessed a lot of folks on this thing on both sides. I mean, I know when we've talked about it in a lot of different settings, that there's goodwill on both sides of this issue. And when I originally came to this whole issue and said, I'd like some direction before March 15th, if y'all would remember, I said, I was almost wanting to punt it and let y'all, whatever y'all say goes. But I needed, in my mind, I got to thinking about that, and I thought that was a term we used to use when I was growing up. That's pretty lily-livered of you, Joey, not to make a recommendation, because you make them all the time. And here we get to the most important recommendation that we've had probably since I've been superintendent as far as contentiousness, and I would punt the ball. And so that's why I made the recommendation I did. And what the recommendation, just to be sure what it is, and this is what Steve read, the Wylie ISD face covering requirement for students and employees is being modified to recommendation. Moving from requirement to recommendation. And so that means it would be choice or voluntary. So it's a modification to recommendation that students and employees wear face coverings. And then that second part of that motion was to address things that can't come up in UIL activities like seating requirements. So the last part of that says, and that the board delegate to the superintendent the authority to implement all further appropriate policies and procedures with respect to further protective measures addressing COVID-19 pandemic for the remainder of the school year, and it ends at the end of the school year. And so we've got, as somebody mentioned, we've got a lot of big things coming our way. We've got graduation. I think we would have that in front of the board before we do that. But there are going to be times when something comes up where it is not going to be conducive to a board meeting because of the timing of whatever that issue might be. We don't know what the issue is going to be. But just like this whole issue cropped up in the middle, a couple of days before we had a board workshop where we have no actions, and the agenda's already posted. So we couldn't take action. And so I would never do anything in those areas that would run contrary to the board. Definitely would make you aware of everything going on. But I do think if we have to wait for a board meeting every time we make any move, it is real cumbersome And so that's why that last part is on there. So, again, I'm echoing Steve Keenum. The School of Trustees has just been fantastic through a lot of tough times, on a lot of different issues. And this is just one where, as I mentioned to y'all, it's okay to have a split vote. Because people of goodwill can see things differently. So, again, that.
Let me speak. Can I speak to the last part of that recommendation?
Yes, sir.
The word I would use is it creates agility for quick decisions. And we can, at our April 12th meeting, we can rescind that authority if we need to. It's not, we have that ability, board. So this is not something, when these decisions are made, they will be reviewed by us. They won't be made, just nilly-willy. I don't know if that's a great word or not, but they will be deliberate and they will be reviewed by the board.
And they will not be made in a vacuum. I'll promise you. I'll get your input.
Well, with the motion presented, I'll second it.
We've got a second. Anybody else have any comments?
Did y'all hear that? Brad seconded?
Yes.
Brad seconded the motion.
Any other comments or questions?
The only comment I have, I guess, is if we do see a spike, I do think we need to move quickly on making, I'm talking about a legitimate spike. I'm not talking about something that's something small, a little blip on the radar. But if we start seeing, the cases really go up, obviously we need to take a quick look at that, make some quick action on that. But other than that, that's the only comment I have.
Under this proposal, they need to fall on you to make quick action.
Possibly, but that would be one that would be such a lightning rod that I would want to definitely get your input on that. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Stephen said, under this, proposal, this, action, that would fall on me. And I said, putting masks back on would be one of those, would be highly discussed and, definitely the mask issue would be very difficult to reverse, I would say, without a lot of discernment. At best.
And it may not be mask that it may not be the mask, it may just be just looking at the situation in general. It may not be putting masks back on. I'm just saying we would need to take a look at the situation if that's the direction we want to go in, is making masks voluntary.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments?
He said, are there any other comments?
No.
Okay.
I guess it's time to call for a vote, Desiree.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and call the roll on this. Miller?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Stephen?
No.
Mike?
No.
We got it. And the A's have it.
Okay, and so he said, and the A's have it, I think the count was 4-3.
I will say we need to make every effort possible to get those vaccines available to our staff as quickly as possible.
Just FYI, for those who are not aware, the Thursday has been set aside. I know Jackie has been communicating that. as much as possible. I will say that I want to thank Hendrick Medical System for making that available. That's been a godsend for a lot of our teachers who wanted it but didn't qualify under 1A and 1B. So they have that option. So.
Well, I'm out of items.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Chris made a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Brad.
Very good.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Thank y'all for your patience tonight. Thank everybody.
Yep.